As the investigation continued, police gradually came to understand that the lack of progress did not stem from the disposal sites, but from a missing foundational element: the identity of the victim. Only once the victim was identified could the scattered fragments of information begin to form a coherent chain of logic. Investigators returned to the most basic and time-consuming task. They re-examined all items recovered from the scene, including fragments of clothing, personal belongings, and any detail that could be traced back to an individual. After repeated verification and cross-checking, one identity was finally confirmed. The victim was Diao Aiqing, a student at Nanjing University's Adult Education College. Police records showed that Diao Aiqing went out on the night of January 10, 1996, and never returned. From that night forward, she made no contact with classmates, friends, or family members. The first discovery of the remains, however, occurred on the morning of January 19, 1996. This meant that from her disappearance to the discovery of the body, 9 full days had passed. Where she went during those 9 days, what she experienced, and under what conditions she lost her life, remain unknown to this day. No direct evidence has ever provided an answer. With the victim's identity confirmed, the investigation entered its next critical phase. Police began reconstructing Diao Aiqing's living environment and daily surroundings prior to her disappearance. She was enrolled at Nanjing University's Gulu campus. In the 1990s, campus management practices were markedly different from those in place today. At the time, the campus environment had several defining characteristics. The campus was not strictly closed. Visitors could enter relatively freely. Night patrols were limited. The surrounding terrain was complex. The Gulu campus was adjacent to Qingliang Mountain, public parks, residential neighborhoods, and a network of small pathways. These areas were neither remote nor fully exposed to constant foot traffic. Police believed that from an objective standpoint, such an environment made it possible for someone to temporarily disappear without immediately drawing attention. At the same time, investigators reached a clear conclusion. The locations where the remains were found were not the primary crime scene. The reasoning was straightforward. The disposal sites showed no large amounts of blood and lacked the conditions necessary for dismemberment, cleaning, or prolonged activity. These locations functioned as final dumping points, not as the place where the crime itself occurred. This led police to determine that the actual crime scene must have been a closed indoor space. Based on this assessment, investigators outlined the essential characteristics of the primary crime scene: a relatively private environment, the ability to operate without interruption, access to a stable water source, capacity for repeated cleaning, minimal risk of attracting attention. Using this framework, police began examining Diao Aiqing's known movements. They reviewed her daily routes, places she may have briefly visited, locations she had mentioned, but which were not considered significant at the time. Despite a narrowing scope, the primary crime scene was never located. This absence became the most critical and irreparable gap in the case. Without the original scene, investigators were unable to confirm the precise method of the crime, fully reconstruct the timeline, recover primary physical evidence, pinpoint the exact location of the act. As a result, the investigation was forced to remain largely within the realm of inference. Police gradually realized that the uniqueness of this case was not limited to the method itself. It lay in the fact that the entire crime process had been deliberately removed from public view. No trace led directly to a definitive location. No clear connection linked a specific person to a specific space. Identifying the victim did not immediately provide answers, but it confirmed one critical fact. This was not a random event. Jiao Weiking's disappearance occurred on a night that appeared entirely ordinary, and it was precisely that ordinariness that allowed the abnormal to go unnoticed at the time. The crime unfolded within the gaps of routine life. By this stage, investigators were certain that they were not dealing with an isolated act of chance violence. They were confronting a crime that occurred within a familiar environment. The investigation continued, and the true answers remained hidden inside a space that had yet to be discovered.